Hello and good evening, America. Today we are going to talk about Trump's tariff against Canada. Canadian forces has given their lives for America, but then Donald Trump came alone. Donald Trump believes that everyone is taking advantage of America. He will create issues where there were none. Finding issues and creating conflicts has been part of Donald Trump's history. Everyone is desperate to gain access to American market, so America think it can make them do anything. Canada said, "Sorry, boss." The two countries got into a dispute. At the request of Mark Carney, the Canadian delegation walked away at the last moment. America got angry. "How dare you?" Then come a 50% tariff on Canadian goods. Canadians responded by boycotting American products. The products that were supposed to be boycotted by Americans instead faced a boycott in Canada because, according to Canadians, the American had behaved so disrespectfully. Canada's position were essentially, why should we sign an American document today when America can change its position tomorrow? If you can go back on your word, you can also go back on a written agreement, right? The Canadian Prime Minister even said that they now understood that they might never return to the old relationship they had with America. Hello, friends, I'm Bisaka Ranavad, and you are watching the 409. There is one thing about Trump. He tries to be friendly with people whom America consider enemies, while imposing tariffs on America's friends, troubling them and making provocative statements. Friends, the friendship between Canada and America was once considered an example for the world. When America suffered the 9/11 attack and around 3,000 Americans were killed, Canada was among the first to say, "We are with you. Tell us where to go." Canadian forces also lost their lives fighting alongside America, but then Donald Trump came. Trump believed that everyone is taking advantage of America. You saw him impose tariff on India, including a 50% tariff. He imposed tariff on China, reduced them, and then imposed tariff again. So why does Donald Trump keep playing this tariff game? First, let me explain that in 1 minute, and then I'll explain what happened with Canada. You can see the headline, "Trade Talks Failed." Why is Donald Trump doing this? He want to show his supporter that he's winning. He want to prove his voter base that he is a strong leader who keep everyone under pressure. To prove that, Donald Trump will simply create issues where there are no issues at all. He will find issues to create conflicts. This has been a recurring pattern in Donald Trump's history. Everything was going well with Canada, but then the insult began. First, he insulted former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Then he insulted the new Canadian leadership by saying that Canada was not really a country and was actually the 51st state of the United States. He even suggested that the Canadian Prime Minister should become the governor of the 51st state. Canadians did not like this. They basically say, "How can you talk to us like that? You earn your living and we earn our. Who are you to speak to us like this way?" Donald Trump behaved similarly to our other. Now, the trade talks that were taking place between Canada and the United States and which were in their final stages have collapsed. Something similar happened with India. Although the situation is not exactly the same, India also stopped its negotiation at the final stage because it wanted preferential treatment before signing a deal. So today let's discuss why the US Canada trade deal failed. Canadian Prime Minister Mark said that he had decided to suspend the talks between the American side has introduced last-minute terms that were unfair, economically harmful, and raises questions about the reliability of the any future agreement. Basically, Canadians felt that they could not trust the Americans. They believed that the Americans could change the term at the last moment according to their own wishes. The American market is enormous and many countries want access to it. The argument being made here is that America believes other countries are so desperate to access to its market that it can force them to accept almost anything. Canada says, "Sorry, you can impose whatever tariff you want, we will find our one path." The Canadian negotiator was Dominic LeBlanc. the minister responsible for international trade and intergovernmental affairs. Mark Carney said that he had decided to suspend the talk. Meanwhile, US Trade Representative Jamieson Gerer told reporters that Canada had walked away from the negotiating table just minutes before the deadline, resulting in the Trump administration announcing a new 50% tariff. The argument is essentially this: America used threats against its friend. Canada responded by walking away. Canada said, "You are doing things that undermine the agreements you previously made. You are adding new terms and conditions at the last minute. We cannot trust you." America became angry and imposed a 50% tariff on Canada. Canada responded, "If you impose a 50% tariff on us, we will match it tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar." Canada said it would retaliate against the new tariff to protect its workers and businesses. So the two countries enter into a serious dispute. Why did the trade talks collapse? Canada wanted tariff relief. Canada asked the United States to reduce the 50% tariff on steel and aluminium to 25%. Canada also wanted relief in the automobile sector because the North American automobile supply chain is deeply integrated. Think about it this way: Canada is above the United States and Mexico is below the United States. Many cars manufactured in America contain thousands of components. Not of all those components are manufactured in America, some are produced in Canada and some in Mexico. For example, suppose a tire comes from Canada and another important automobile component came from Mexico. If the United States put 50% tariff on those important components, they become 50% more expensive. The problem is that supply chains are interconnected. A single vehicle can contain parts that cross the Canadian, American, and Mexican borders multiple times. If tariffs are imposed at every stage, the same supply chain can effectively face tariffs again and again. Canada therefore wanted lower tariff on automobile and the removal of certain tariff barriers. There were also disputes involving dairy products, American-made vehicles, and other trade restrictions. The Canadian boycott of American product. Canadians also began to boycott some American products. For example, American wine and alcoholic beverages faced reduced demand in Canada. The argument was that Canadians were unhappy with Trump's statements about Canada, including his comments that Canada should become part of the United States. This led some Canadians to stop buying American product voluntarily. The speaker compares this with the earlier boycott of the Maldives by some Indian tourists after controversial remarks were made about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The point is that sometimes governments do not officially order a boycott. Ordinary people themselves decide not to buy or visit something because they are unhappy with the other side. Canada's position. Canada says the United States changed the proposed term at the last moment. Canada considered those changes unfair and economically damaging and believed they undermine confidence in any eventual agreement. Canada therefore says it cannot simply sign an agreement if it believes the United States might change the term afterward. The United States, on the other hand, argues that Canada introduced new demands and backed away from earlier commitments. So both sides blame each other for the collapse of the negotiation. The United States offered cooperation in areas such as aerospace supply chain, critical minerals, stronger enforcement against goods produced through forced labor, measures against unfair trade practices, beginning formal negotiations regarding the USMCA. USMCA stands for the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Canada responded that tariff issues needed to be addressed fairly before the border agreement could move forward. Canada's changing relationship with America, according to the statement attributed to Prime Minister Mark Carney, Canada has realized that the United States has changes. The argument is that the old relationship between Canada and America may never return to what it once was because trust has been damaged. Canada believes that the United States is unilaterally changing trade relationship around the world, including imposing tariffs on some of its closest allies and charging them for access to the enormous American markets. The speaker argues that when two friends have a disagreement, they should sit down and talk about it and make compromises. His criticism of Trump is that Trump prefers publicly pressuring and humiliating other leaders because he wants to appear strong. He gave examples involving leaders such as Volodymyr Zelensky, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Kim Jong un. The speaker argues that Trump behaved aggressively to our American traditional allies while appearing more accommodating to our leaders of countries that are considered strategic rivals of the United States. He asks why Trump does not use the same aggressive approach toward China or Russia. India's position. The speaker also discussed India. He says that India's trade negotiations with the United States has been put on hold because India wants preferential access before signing a deal. India's position is essentially that it does not need to rush and will not accept any agreement simply because the United States sets a deadline. The speaker concludes that Canada was one of the Americans' most loyal and long standing friends but believes Donald Trump tariffs policies have severely damaged that relationship. He says that perhaps a future American president may eventually repair the relationship, but for now, according to his interpretation, the trust between the two countries has been badly damaged. Thank you very much for watching today's video. If you like the video, please like it, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon.